Hello, I'm Pat Lawson-Muse. They are an invisible army, caring for people who are too well for the hospital but too sick for home. More than one of every 5 Americans are caregivers, most of them women. Right now, though, there's a research study underway at George Washington University to better understand how caring for dementia patients affects the physical and brain health of Black male caregivers. Joining us to talk about this is Robert W. Turner, Ph.D. He's an assistant professor in the Department of Clinical Research and Leadership at George Washington's School of Medicine and Health Sciences. He also holds a Ph.D. in sociology at the Graduate Center at City University of New York, and he's a research scientist in the Center for Biobehavioral Health Disparities Research at Duke University. Dr. Turner, I must admit that I don't tend to think of Black males when I think of caregiving because the majority of caregivers in this country are women. You are the lead investigator on this research at GW. Tell us about it and the decision to focus this study on Black men who are caregivers.
Well, Pat, I really appreciate your intro and I appreciate the question. And what we try to say in our lab, and we've seen this kind of bear out a little bit, is that yes, you're absolutely right. Women are overwhelmingly the people who provide care for our loved ones. But what I say is Black men are they're the men, they're the people who are hidden right in plain sight because we actually are providing for care for our loved ones, sometimes for our spouse and sometimes for our parents, sometimes even for our siblings. And one of the reasons that I felt like this was such an important group to understand is because we know that in so many different areas for health outcomes, Black men have the worst health outcomes, the largest disparities of any other racial or ethnic and gender group. And so we know that providing care can be extremely stressful. And what we wanted to understand was how does this affect the mental health, the cognitive health, as well as the physiological health, given the stress that they may have to endure for a particular period of time.
So while caregiving does provide many benefits and eases burdens for families, it can, as you've indicated, take a toll on a caregiver, on finances, career, health. Is the toll any different for Black caregivers?
Well, that's something that we have to understand, something that we actually don't know, not well enough. What we do know is that, unfortunately, for African Americans, for Blacks, we are underrepresented in biomedical research. And so oftentimes what we know about any incidence of disease or the social determinants of health or any of these external pressures, we have a pretty good understanding and need to know much more about how this impacts the majority population, but we need many more individuals to get involved in research so we can understand the specific nature of how these things impact the health of Black Americans. And we know even that much, I guess you could say we know that much more do we need to learn about when it comes to Black men, because even so much more, it's harder for them to get involved in studies. And I think one of the reasons that we don't see people in studies that much is that we just don't go out into the communities and ask them. And that's really what I'm working on, is just I take what we call a community-based participatory approach, where we're working with as many community organizations as we possibly can, getting out and getting to know people in the community and just asking them to get involved and saying that your mental health is really important and we need to understand that better.
Okay, so tell us about the men that you're looking for or that you've already recruited, and very quickly the parameters of the study. What do they have to be about? What are the qualifications for taking part in this?
Sure. Well, we're looking for men in the DMV area, and for us, we extend the DMV all the way out to Baltimore. This is we're very fortunate that this study is funded by the National Institute of Aging, and we want to understand how neurocognitive and physiological aging, that process takes place for Black men who are providing care. And so we have 2 different groups. Our control group are Black men from the ages of 30 to 85 who do not provide care, but they're regular men in our community of all different kind of phases in life. And then we're also looking for Black men who provide care, primary care for a loved one. And that loved one, again, could be a wife, it could be, in some instances, it might even be a child, it could be a sibling, it could be a neighbor. And what we look for and what we say is a primary care is anyone who's providing unpaid care for a loved one of 10 hours or more. And then altogether, we ask of people to get involved. It takes about between 4 to 6 hours over several days to get involved, where we do a whole neurocognitive battery of testing. We also do saliva swabs where we can look at the cortisol levels for the physiological stress. And within that 80 people, we're probably going to do about another 11 months in the field to collect data from individuals. We've been very great response from the Washington Informer, where we've done an e-blast. And right up to this point, we have about 25 participants. So we really need a lot more individuals to get involved with this, but we're off to a really good start.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll continue our talk with Robert Turner, an assistant professor at GW. We'll be right back. We continue our discussion with Dr. Robert Turner, assistant professor in the clinical research department at George Washington University's School of Medicine and Health Sciences, where this study is underway to determine the effects of dementia, caring for patients with dementia on Black male caregivers. Dr. Turner, you told us how long the study takes. You have about 25 participants. How many do you need?
We need 80 participants in total, so in the DMV area. And the great thing about this is that people can come into our lab at George Washington, or we can collect all the data virtually. So we can get them signed up, and we can use the internet to collect the data, so they can do it right from their own homes as well.
So this involves just examinations? No, does it involve any medication? And do they get compensated?
Yes, they do. We compensate them up to $125. And again, the grant is underwritten by the National Institute of Aging. So we're very fortunate to be able to do that. And it includes a battery of neuropsychological tests as well as their health profile. And then, as I mentioned to you before, we'll collect saliva samples that we'll send the kits out to their homes. So the whole process is really geared to be able to adjust to whatever their needs might be for them to get involved with us.
And how do they apply, enroll?
Great. The best thing to do is just reach out and give us a call. Call us at the lab, which is 202-994-1728. I'll say that again, 202-994-1728. Or they can go online and register at our website, which is www.rwturnerlab.com. That's www.rwturnerlab.com.
All right, before you go, in addition to Black male caregiving, you have a special clinical interest in professional and student athletes. In fact, you're currently engaged in a sleep apnea study involving NFL players and another study involving the athlete brain health and aging issue. Tell us about those projects.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we're very excited about it. I partnered with brilliant researchers at the Global Sport Institute at Arizona State. And what we've done is we did 3 focus groups, one of Black men in the general community, another focus group of former collegiate football athletes, Black men, and then we looked at former NFL athletes. And this is about health literacy. What do they know about sleep apnea, the impact of it, the importance of it, and how really the risk factors for Black men are, so high, and what that means to their lives and mental health. And we found out some fascinating things. We're really excited about writing up some of that and presenting that into the public. And then we're also another study that I have out of Duke University, partnering with really excellent scholars there and out of my lab at George Washington. We're looking at the neurocognitive and neuropsychological effects of brain health and cognition related to sports concussions, and trying to understand the cognitive aging effect of that and see if there's an accelerated aging impact, and if that leads to the relationships and the links to Alzheimer's disease and dementia.
All right, and very quickly, you wrote a book. Some of this is in your book.
Yes, it is. Unfortunately, my book is called Not for Long: The Life and the Career of the NFL Athlete, and it really investigates and tries to understand what are the issues that are involved with men transitioning to their life after sports, especially those who have spent their whole entire lives for this goal, and then before you know it, the average career of the NFL athlete is only 3.3 years. What happens to them in the remainder of their lives? And that's really the investigation that we do in that book.
All right, it's a very current topic. You're doing a lot of very interesting work. Thank you so much for joining us, Professor Robert Turner II. And again, the title of his book is Not for Long. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And up next, using music to beat cancer. We'll be right back.